Can you hear me? Okay, great. So welcome everyone, and thanks again for being here and for coming to Mac Admins. I know we've had a lot of sessions, a lot of information thrown at us. So do note that I'm kind of keeping this as a little bit of a primer for this information, and I do hope that you enjoy. Do note that I am, as you can see here, a reformed glasshole. I am sorry. I am the problem. So this is kind of like my foray. This was my first moment where I was introduced to this technology. Now this headset's annoying. This is my first intro to the technology itself, and throughout my years of using this stuff, it's only like got me more excited for what's ahead. And getting into this session in general, I'm going to kind of start off with the platforms. And what I mean by platforms is all those terminologies: XR, AR, VR, PR. No, wait, not PR. Then we're going to kind of talk about the hardware itself. So, what makes these devices in different categories and how do they actually work. Then the elephant in the room, spatial computing, probably why you're here. We're going to talk just a little bit about that. Then we're going to quickly, just lightly go into the management of these devices. It's one of those things that changes every day. And then I'm going to again give future considerations as far as the technology, where I kind of see it going, and just things that I picked up along the way. And then I am hoping to have a nice Q&A. I don't have a Vision Pro with me. You probably noticed I'm not wearing it during the presentation. You probably wouldn't want me to, because you will get a little seasick. But I do have other devices here that I do hope that, if you're interested after this session, you are more than welcome to run after me and be like, hey, can I try that? And I could show you a couple of things here and there. So if you're watching at home, I'm sorry, you don't try to find me. Please don't. So what's the deal with these different devices that we have here? Like, what's up with that? Well, they kind of fall into a couple of different categories. AR, mixed reality, VR, and then XR, extended reality. And the truth is, extended reality is kind of the all-encompassing term. So my over-engineered presentation that I put together, this title that you're probably like, oh God, actually should just be this. But a lot of people don't know the different terms. So if I put this, you'd show up, you'd be here, but it'd be a little confusing for a lot of people. So why did I bother doing this presentation in the first place? As I mentioned, I was like, I'm really excited about this technology. I've been using Google Glass VR headsets. Maybe I could do something with this. Maybe I could be productive with this. It's a little bit of column A, column B. But let's dive back into the technology itself. So we're going to start off with augmented reality, where the digital world is laid out onto your real one. And you can kind of see here, you can actually see it, that's good. Oh, nope, gave that away. So as you can see here, this is kind of giving pieces of information, and that's kind of where AR excels. It excels in this idea of like, I'm not obstructing you, but I'm laying out either like information or objects in front of you. That's not really obstructing anything and can give you context. Now, one of the things you might see, and if there's any Pokemon Go players, feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to play with y'all. There is obviously a Slack. There's a Slack channel for everything. There's a Pokemon Go Slack channel. But what's really cool about it is they were doing it pretty early on, and you've already have a device in your pocket that can show you what AR is like. There's plenty of other different apps, but this is one that's pretty popular. I'm sorry? Oh. So when it comes to this AR technology, we are kind of seeing it change a little bit. So you'll notice here the format of this guy's wearing these glasses, these AR glasses, and he is getting that digital world and the reality, and then also there's these other things in the background and then all this other stuff. And what I found is that the things that kind of make AR, it's kind of wishy-washy. Like there's kind of different ways that it blends together into some of the other types of things I'm going to show you. But really the main thing to distill from it is content placed in your reality with limited immersion. So it's not trying to take you out of this world. And there's not, when you wear these glasses, and let me just show you. So I have a little prop, these glasses. As you move your head, the screen is following you, so you always see it there. So that kind of means if you're someone that doesn't like motion, you're going to get a little seasick there, and you're going to find that it might work for certain situations, but it might not work for all situations. Now, pivoting over to VR, the opposite of this, don't be immersed. This is like you are immersed in that world, like you are in that digital world. As you can see here, a prime example of what probably most people think of VR is this guy right here, bulky headset with his little controllers, and this also has the computer of what he's seeing, that virtual world. And so that's what VR is. It's that I'm putting you into a totally different world and trying to remove the world around you. So right now a popular fitness app takes advantage of that immersion and turns it into a fun game that you can play. So VR really is an immersive platform, and your movements are tracked with devices that are external from you, usually with VR. Some of these devices, lighthouses, are actually placed in different corners of the room. You can even see right here, we have our little friends here. They have these lighthouses that are these little boxes here. If you take them apart, actually has spinning lasers, and it's scanning the area for movement. So as you move your controllers, it is detecting that something has happened. It's detecting that the headset is moving, throughout. Another way of body tracking in VR is the IMU. It is essentially a combination of things that you have in your cell phone. Your phone kind of knows where it's orientated. And you have to calibrate it, though. That's a shortcoming. So usually it's a T-pose. The things with these devices is that there is drift over time. So over time, even when you're not moving, sometimes it might be a little off. So they're gaining popularity, but they still need more development. And then we have inside-out tracking. This is kind of the new thing. And it kind of will be like the theme of a lot of what you're going to see with these types of technologies. These are wearable devices. So these are devices that you put on your feet. You usually have them on your legs and on your arms. It depends on how many degrees of tracking throughout. And the reason why you want to even worry about you're body tracking, what can that do? The more points that you're tracking, the more real your movements are going to be. So if you are playing a game, your movements are going to be more fluid. If you are doing a chatting kind of thing, or you're working with other people or consulting with other people, your movements will look more realistic. So it's it's a little less janky and more immersive. It's all about the immersion. And now moving on, we have so many of these things to cover. Mixed reality. So what is mixed reality? It's in the name. You don't really need me to describe it to you. It is the blend of both of those things, AR, VR, and kind of what's made mixed reality up until this point, probably about a couple of months ago, is that there usually is you have one window, you open up an app, you're in that app, you get back out of it, and then you're just in your one app. You might have another app, but that's categorically what's kind of made mixed reality its own thing. Now, what's kind of cool about it is, and this kind of hints at to that productivity element that I brought on. This is a VR environment, but this is a mixed reality headset. So some things to note here. Like my example right here is that you can see bringing your devices into that digital world is, it's kind of like a little bit of a game changer, because you have all your content, you have your device in front of you, and you can interact with it in that digital world. And what that opens up, kind of cool. You can be anywhere you want to be, but it does open up collaboration. And this is like one of my first points of being like, hey, this is like really cool. So as you can see here, you have all these people. These people could be in the same room, but they also can not be in the same room. And I'll go into this specific app that makes this possible in a little bit more detail what's going on here. But do note that like this is on mixed reality headsets, but that's a VR environment that you're looking at. So now moving on to spatial computing. And I promise there's a convergence of all this. Spatial computing is what the Vision Pro brought. It is, a mixed reality headset. I know it's a dirty word there, but it's not. It's spatial computing. And spatial computing takes mixed reality and combines it with one other element. And that element is to have anchored elements throughout your environment. Why is this important? This person right here, they have their presentation going on, and then they're having a remote call with everyone. So, this could be you on the go. This could be you at Mac Admins. I still have to do my presentation and talk numbers with my coworkers. It enables things like that. But it also enables kind of like other elements as well. Like my favorite was I had my cooking timers, because this is a spatial environment. So take those UI elements, those things that you see, the little timer that you have on your phone, and actually put it over the things that you're working on. Because I have ADHD, and sometimes I forget things. I've not burned any house down or burned anything like in that, but it does help, to know what I'm keeping track of. And it kind of has like other elements of as well I'll go into, but just note like that is what makes it different. I can put these elements in specific places, like my work screen. Another one you saw that my screens were stationary in front of me. For this one, you can see that your screen is, they have it perfectly in front of you, but you can have it off to the side. You can have it wherever you want, whatever makes it comfortable for you, and you can have your other apps that you use, your other productivity tools that you use, or your entertainment in different places. And then on top of that, because it's a mixed reality device, a spatial computing device, you have the option to go into a VR world. And this is one of the VR games that they have for the Vision Pro. So do note that these things kind of converge together. And so it does kind of make it a little confusing. So you'll hear people saying like, spatial computing device, mixed reality device, and you're like, please pick something. So, but what does bring these two, technologies together is your cameras are going to be available by default versus the immersive thing that's trying to keep you out. AR is always like, oh, I want you to be in the environment. There are cameras on these devices, like I have right here. There are cameras on there so that they can give you the ability to see the outside world and bring it inside that virtual world. So that is kind of like the differentiator between VR and that. And controllers become secondary because you have all this camera technology. Steve Jobs said it best, right? You don't need a stylus. You use your hands. So hands have become and are one of the best ways of actually interacting with your content. And truth be told, you will see that change, the way that the hand tracking works. And then eye tracking. So Vision Pro is really known for this, the eye tracking. But a lot of other devices have eye tracking. This one does not. So you'll, when it comes to picking devices, and like I said, we'll go into hardware. I'll talk about that then. So just know that the immersion, reality, and the separate, the blended of the two are available. So Vision Pro really does this like best. I don't know if you've seen the immersive environments. I also recommend everyone do a Vision Pro demo. They've changed it up and they made it's really great. So that you do have the option to change your immersion, and that's like I think so cool. So as I mentioned, you would just have those items and they could be spatially placed. Now, going into the hardware, I do want to talk about this a little bit. Does this work? Oh, yes, it works. Awesome. So, starting off with AR, you'll notice that these devices kind of have a similar style in mind. It's glasses. And as I showed you earlier, going to a coffee shop and using this, no, you're going to look a little silly. But no one's going to bother you about it. On the plane, no one really even glanced at me, actually. I was kind of disappointed. I'm like, hey, do you know who I am? Hey, I'm the man of the future. So, but that's what I think a strength of this hardware, and it's kind of why that hardware is in that style. It just wants to bring, screens to your face so that you can interact with your content. One of these, though, and I'll explain it in a minute, one of these is not like the others. I will get to that, but let's go head over to, the interesting category for a lot of people here, the Vision Pro category, I like to call it. We have the MetaQuest 3, which I do have with me right now. We have this other device, the Pico, and then and I'll go into each one of these as well. And then we have another one here, which is the Magic Leap. So notice the trend. We've now left glasses world, and now we are in the world of the thing that's going to just hug my face completely. And you'll notice that these controllers, make their appearance. You're not going to really see controllers in the AR space. And then finally, we have the other exciting category, VR. Some of you, may recognize some of these devices because I do think VR is what a lot of people associate with this type of technology. So we'll get into these boys, but as you can see, they got a little bit bigger when you went to the VR category because if you think about what we talked about earlier, it is to immerse you. So they need, you need to make sure that the images, the content is crisp, and you need to make sure that the sounds are drowned out so that you can really get into the world that you're in. And then we need those lighthouses so that we can make sure that tracking is on point. And that's a really important part of these technologies is the tracking of where you are so that you can properly interact with everything that you have. So going into the hardware area, and I do want to talk about specifically this gift that is really, really washed out on this. But basically, this is one of the most popular games on virtual reality devices that I've seen as far as being readily available that people might associate. Beat Saber was, I think, during the pandemic, one of the apps I used so much just to get activity. So, but you're seeing here is this person is immersed in their virtual world, but now there's this element here of they actually have external cameras as well that are actually recording them, and they're kind of blending the scenes together. So I thought it was just a cool little thing to show y'all. Specifically, when it comes to this hardware that I want to highlight here is that you'll notice one of these is different, and I am sorry that is so blurry. What's going on with this one is called the Big Screen Beyond. They decided that instead of being like the other headsets that you have here, trying to do a whole bunch of different things, that they're we'll do one thing really well, and that the Big Screen Beyond has one of the best visuals at the moment. At the moment, this could change tomorrow. Someone could drop something tomorrow, and this would be wrong. But the visual clarity and then the lightness, and I'll talk about it later. But I do think that that's something that's holding a lot of this technology back is the weight of a lot of these devices. So the Big Screen Beyond kind of wants to mitigate that by making it one of the lightest visual headsets to use. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we have the Valve Index, which is one of the earlier devices, the Oculus V1, which is the first device. And you can see that not much has really changed from the beginning of the VR headsets. if anything, they look like they've gotten bigger, right? Because they started adding cameras for the pass through, and more immersion as far as the optics go. So going into, all right, so I showed you all this VR hardware. Well, you said that productivity was why you were looking into it. What I found is that for productivity, VR itself is good for it, but you're kind of limited outside of the gaming sphere. There is an app called Virtual Desktop, and it does make it so that you can bring your screens internally in. But the thing is, you need the headset, you need lighthouses, the controllers, and then you need a PC, and it doesn't work for Mac. So I'm not going to keep dwelling on that. Pivoting over to the AR hardware that I showed you earlier, we have the X-Reels, which are what I have right here, the Rokid Max, or Rokid series of devices, and then Vitcher. These three devices they're very similar, slightly varying degrees of quality. But one of the things that I found really interesting was, I don't know, let's go away, is that they have these companion devices. So we have right here is the X-Reel Beam. When paired with this device, when you bring them all together, you actually get the ability of tracking. So my screen that I had before that's sitting and following me around now becomes stationary. So when I look away, it is like a Vision Pro. In regards. So it kind of turns this AR device into a spatial computing device. And it also, it's running Android, so it does run Android apps as well. This other one that we have right here, the X-Reel Beam Pro, which I think literally is not shipping, it's just shipping right now. It's content creators have gotten them already. What it's doing here is it's not a phone. It sure looks like one. And what it brings is the productivity of, so what is stopping, this is a Google device. What is stopping me from enrolling that into my Google MDM and managing that and handing out these glasses and that? And wow, the barrier to entry into spatial computing of Vision Pro being $4,000, because you do want that Apple Care. Please don't get one without Apple Care. Like, please. Ask me how I know. No, I didn't break anything, I promise. But you'll see that this is kind of where maybe things are headed, right? And then also this one right here is this is the Vitcher kind of answer to that. This one is actually an Android device that you wear here, so you have your glasses, you have a little neckband, and you can watch your content and kind of hook up your keyboard and your mouse, and you could do some minor productivity. And then that one right here is interesting because you actually put two glasses together. That's pretty cool. Think about it. You can actually, watch something together with someone else. Maybe you don't have a big TV or the space to have one, but now you both get to enjoy it. So when it comes to the productivity elements of this, what I've found is that outside of like those pieces of hardware that make it spatial, and I probably use this device more out and about than anything else, is that glasses style makes it so that you don't have to worry about people being like, oh, what are you wearing? They'll still say, what are you wearing? But it won't be like as scary. And the lightweight design prevents fatigue. And when we get towards the end, I'll give you my story about why the Vision Pro isn't with me right now. And this is your hint, is that the weight of these devices do cause fatigue. There's this thing called chromatic shades. Basically, it's a fancy term for when you're wearing these, they are like glasses. So I can still see all of you right now. And if I had this plugged in, I can actually darken the displays. And I found that actually really helpful in environments where I'm like, oh, I have my screen here. Oh, someone's talking to me. I can turn around. Now I can see you. Press the button. I can see you better. Now I want to go back to my content. Go away now. So I was like, oh, this is the chromatic shades are a gimmick. Like, no, like, why would you charge me more for that? No, I think they're actually really worth it. And the best part about these devices is that they can connect to most hardware. I won't say all, but for example, connects to my Steam Deck, my iPhone, connects to my laptop, can connect to any thing that you can Apple or AirPlay to. So a lot of different devices. So and with the right attachments, you could even go to a console, like a Xbox or a PlayStation. So that's not really productivity, but it's for the off time of the productivity. It's the off time. Now let's go into the MR hardware. Wait a minute, you were in the AR category. What happened? It has the shape of an AR device, but this is actually not out yet. And time will tell because this one's been delayed a lot. So I'm not going to advise anyone to get this one when it first comes out, but maybe pay attention to it, because what this does is it takes the likeness of an AR device, and then it adds the component of head tracking, spatial computing that things like the X-Reel does with the attachments. So, and they also don't show any of the attachments in a lot of their promo videos, so we'll see what actually comes out in the end. And then you have the popular one, the MetaQuest 3, as I mentioned here, and the Pico. The Pico is hard to get in the States, but I think they're releasing new models, and I think that a lot of people like them, but they do have a different platform. So they don't always have all the apps, and that's going to be kind of the fragmentation that you saw with Android earlier on. I think that VR, XR is dealing with right now, because they have different, and that's why Meta has opened up their platform and said we want to have other people use Meta OS, and I don't have it included here because I do think it's still too early to tell, but Google is doing their own XR platform as well, and maybe they do it, maybe they kill it. So I didn't want to put that in here yet. So going into the productivity of these devices, this is kind of where things get a little bit cooler. It gets a little bit more interesting. So right here we have immersed. Now what's really cool about this is you have displays here. Now I have them in this configuration, and I don't have a ton of images for it, but you can actually move these screens and place them around your room. It does not have to necessarily be right in front of you, but it is kind of meant to be a stationary app. I'm sitting at my desk, or in my cases I have a standing desk, so I'll sit and stand. It gives you the ability to have a little cutout right here, so I can see my laptop, or I can see my keyboard, so I can use that still. I haven't spilled anything on me while wearing this. So that, I think, right there is a testament, because I spill stuff on myself all the time without wearing anything. Well, clothes or whatever. So what's cool about it is that you also open up the elements of collaboration, and that's kind of I want to take a moment to talk about that. The collaboration element of these devices, as they get lighter, as they get more tolerable, is that you can see more people having this. And when you have that, the story I like to tell about this is I have a good friend of mine, hi Brad, that we worked together at a previous company. And now we don't work at the same company, but we like to talk shop sometimes. Well, both of us can get into this immersed app. And as I showed you earlier, multiple people, you kind of look like little silly avatars, so it's kind of dorky. But having, you're both working and you only can see your screens, you can choose to share screen between each other, but you're only working on that screen, and just hearing him go, oh shit, I'm like, what happened? And then we can talk about it, and I can't see his stuff, so he can kind of obfuscate the information, so we're not sharing anything proprietary and whatnot. So what that collaboration I think is just really powerful. So you have desperate teams, and again, as these things come down in price and tolerating weight, you still open up those rooms for collaboration with other people. I know, and I actually don't really cover this really, so I have it more in the spatial computing. I'll talk about that, but there's some interesting stuff that, as well that gets opened up. So Immersed is great for that stuff. And Immersed, before Immersed, there was just Meta Horizons, and they kind of take that same element, like you're in a virtual environment, and here you can even see they have a digital keyboard. Your hands are literally, as you move around, you can see your hands. In Immersed, you don't really get that, but you'll see here that you have your screens. The thing that I struggle with sometimes is that you can have up to 3 screens, but they have to kind of be in the same place. And like I said, this is like within the last month, a new version of their OS allows to make the screens significantly larger. And so like that, they've also improved the performance, because one of the things that in apps like this, if there's lag, and you're sensitive to motion sickness, you will feel it. Ask me how I know. But when it comes to the Meta Horizons workroom, they really done a good job of. I'm sorry, I'm getting tired of moving this. Okay, maybe you'll stay up there. Go. Is that they're at a breakneck pace improving these products. Virtual Desktop VR, hello old friend. That works here, and they actually have a dedicated app that you can install. And these apps are running on these devices. So that means I can connect to this wirelessly or with a cable if my internet connection is bad. That's the other element I probably should have mentioned. Virtual Desktop does the same thing, and now they've just enabled the ability for you to have multiple screens when they only used to have one. Spatial computing, oh hello. So the Vision Pro, I don't even need this slide. You know the Vision Pro is going to be there. And then we also, wait a minute, you were in the MR category. How did you get there? With version 67, that's coming out soon. It's been beta, I've been trying the beta. They've now enabled the ability for you to open multiple apps, and you also have the ability on the Meta Quest to install Android apps. Ooh, exciting. And so that means you can have your different apps like Chrome, Teams. Do you really want Teams in there? No, but you might have to put it in there anyway. But you could use these. You could have all these apps in there and place them like throughout your space, as I mentioned. You can have a video going, and all your dashboards with all the green lights, no red lights. You can have those available to you. So a lot of the stuff that I talked about for the other devices still apply here. So just note that as we converge forward, you probably notice every time there's a device, keep shifting towards a certain category. But we'll talk about that in a second. This slide. They made an announcement during one of the luncheons, and they actually made the announcement about the Vision OS 2.0, and that it changes what I originally had on this slide, which was just managed Apple IDs were the only way to enroll devices into MDM. So you had to have a managed Apple ID, and then you were able to enroll it into your MDM if your MDM supported it, of course. When it first released, there was no MDM anything. So they've quickly, within only a couple of months, are getting these controls in there. But the main takeaway here is that Apple sees this, and then they said, like iOS and iPad OS, like that is like where it kind of falls in. So those are the types of controls that you'll have in your MDMs, because, that person, in that one department is like, hey, I just bought a Vision Pro. Can you help set it up for me? And right now, you will only be able to do so much if you don't use managed Apple IDs. You won't even be able to manage it. Very expensive device to be doing that, but you will have the ability to lock that down and to control it properly. So then you can actually enable different people to have it. So Meta has their own version of that, because of course. So the shortcomings of the AR stuff is that there's no way to manage this. I did allude to for Xreal that you could probably enroll that into Google Manager, But I did some poking around, and I was like, wait, Meta actually has a way of managing these devices. And what's interesting is that they do have third-party options as well. So VMware, Microsoft, lucky all of y'all. I don't have any of those, so I won't be managing these that way. But I skimmed through their controls, and they do seem to have similar like controls for that you would expect for a device. And I'm sure if you actually were like, oh, my environment, it might not work for that environment. The thing to note here, though, is Meta devices require Meta accounts. So then you're going to be dealing with that. So you might want to go shared device for those options if you don't like dealing with it. So with everything that I blabbered on about, the questions probably, or question I had for myself was like, so was it worth it? Because this is the first device I got. It was on sale for $500 at the time on Amazon, and my friend got it, the friend that I told you about, and he was like, hey, like I'm gonna get this and like just mess around with it. I'm like, all right, fine. Game recognizes game, I'll get one too. And so once I got that, it's kind of like the Tribbles. I was like, I got one headset, and I was like, ooh, I kind of like this. So I went and got, one of these guys. I was like, oh, that'll be great. I can walk around with that. And then I made the poor decision of going to try on the Vision Pro. It was a very poor financial decision, but it was truly cool. And I debated for this presentation having more images of like the inside of the environments, and I kind of realized that your brain wouldn't understand it, like, and I say that respectfully, like what it can feel for you. For some people, they immediately go in, they're like, no, not for me, get this away from me. But for these devices, there are like kind of like a click. And the price is high right now, but the price is not necessarily what's, I think, going to stop people from buying these devices. I think it's a couple other things that I'll talk about, for future stuff. But the thing is, overall, I used the device for about 14 days, and I was very unsure about whether or not I wanted to keep it because there was, the main thing is there's a lot of pressure here for some people, and it's all about your face shape. My problem, not going to be your problem. So none of this should dissuade anyone from getting a Vision Pro. I come from a place of love, I promise. So there was a lot of pressure. And so I talked with a manager there, and I said, like, look, I don't want to get rid of this, but I'm like, for my tax bracket, sir, does not allow me to keep this. And so he was like, yeah, I understand. And he's like, but you know what? If you really are going to try, he's like, here are like some 3D printed options. If you look online, you'll find a whole bunch of different options available for different types of straps and whatnot to distribute the weight differently. And so I tried that. Well, it worked fine for about a week, so I was in the third week, I think. But then I started developing back pain. Back and neck pain, actually. What I found is, even with this device as well, is that for me, it pulls muscles in different areas. And boy, I was so unhappy about that. I did not want to have to return the device, but what I applaud Apple for doing is that I think they've really went above and beyond in trying to make different ways for these devices to fit as many heads as possible with the limitations of how much hardware they can pack with a certain amount of weight. That I do appreciate all that, and I still am excited for this technology, and I do think it was worth it. I wish I still had it. The sleeper hit in my category that I still love are these guys. They're light. I get my screens with these, and I'm excited to try their Beam Pro because I'm like, oh, I can enroll that into my MDM. Like I can probably control that and access my work stuff. So it kind of would make it that I have a Chromebook on my face. It's almost like we're back to the Google Glass, but I mean it does a lot more now. But so like the technology, it's worth it. It was exciting. They've been my sleeper hit. The other thing I will note here was it was so worth wearing this in the office. You knew I was going to wear this to the office, right? Like, of course. And I have an open floor plan, so it's kind of like this, just with monitors. So wearing this, and someone's like, "Hi, what you got there?" They're like, "Is that the Vision Pro?" Wait, what? No, it's not the Vision Pro. I don't have the Vision Pro. I have this. I'm trying it out. I'm like trying to. They're like, "Oh, what's the value in it?" And so, stuff that I talked about today is a lot of the stuff that I was iterating to them. But at some point, they kind of were just like, "All right, yeah, that's Alex. He's doing the crazy headset thing again." Um, then I did go into the office with the Vision Pro. They're like, "Oh, is that the Meta?" I wish I was joking, but it's true. What I find is that a lot of people don't, and you might be experienced and you came to this session and then it's not going, I'm sorry that it's not like a deeper session as far as like technicality or technology and whatnot, but it's really more about like the process that I went through and the journey that I went on. But a lot of people don't even know what you're dealing with. Like I think a couple of people were like didn't even know what the VR was. I'm like, there needs to be a lot of education in this space. But what they loved about the Vision Pro was that and it's the reason why. Again, I'm not going to do this presentation wearing this headset because the motion blur, but also like I can see y'all, but you can't see my face, so I'm not going to be as funny. Or maybe I would be more funny wearing it. But with eyesight, like being able to know that someone's interacting with you, knowing that someone, hey, I'm talking to you, you're talking to each other. I'm talking. You would be able to, being able to see that I'm interacting with you and seeing when I can't because you see the little haze. Like was a true game changer as far as using this device in public. Like I do think the shortcoming for this device is that it looks like I'm going to snipe someone and I'm a very dangerous person because it's very Splinter Cell over here. Like no, I'm not. I'm just a nerd. I'm harmless. I promise. But the Vision Pro, as it gets more popular, I do think like that stigma of being, wearing a headset like that. Also, just having multiple screens, and I won't go too deep into it. So I do think it was well worth the time. And if this actually plays, I will give you one video of looking at like what my typical setup is. So as you see here, I do have just 3 screens with a whole bunch of information and research on the left side. So I usually keep the important stuff ahead of me because turning your head a lot in this thing adds to those issues that I was talking about earlier. All in all, I do still use this once in a while. I take frequent breaks and kind of just make sure that I'm not overdoing it. So before this presentation, I needed to be in the headset a lot more to make sure that I had all my stuff. So my neck was bothering me a little bit. So when it comes to the future stuff, you're about to see a wall of text. I apologize, but I just really wanted to get my thoughts out for y'all. So I'm going to just cover these points. You don't have to read all of them. What I do see as the future of these devices, I still see them trending. Like I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, Vision Pro is dead." I'm like, no, Vision Pro is not dead. It was a device to really show people what can be done, and now they just need to refine it in different areas. So maybe you're someone, maybe they need to make it lighter. Maybe they need to save the money. What's that? Oh, I just see. Can you hear me? Yeah, good. Okay, good. So the weight will decrease for these devices. It needs to happen. Moore's law cannot die, even though NVIDIA says that it is. VR sickness is definitely something that is a hurdle, and a lot of that comes into the fact of that tracking that I told you, being immersed in this environment. If there's any glitch in your hand movement and your body's still moving and it's expecting to not move, it's visually saying like, oh, your hands are stuck, but you're still moving. Oh, you're going to feel sick. So they need to work on that, and I think that's, again, where Vision Pro and their dedicated chipset to just dealing with taking in external cameras, I think that is such an important thing because of the problem with a lot of VR sickness and stuff like that, motion sickness in general. Spatial computing is the end game. As you saw, AR, MR, all those devices are moving towards spatial computing. It will be spatial computing. Like that is just, where it'll be. Maybe AR has a place to live. Maybe VR will still have a place to live. But I think mixed reality is really just all going to be spatial computing. So, and Apple will continue pushing other people to innovate. Apple, by releasing the Vision Pro, has already, and I know Meta, and I know the head of that team, Boz, will say that they're working on a lot of those technologies that they've now introduced in this new version that I'm telling you about that makes it more of a spatial computing device. I know that they said like, oh, we had that in the pipeline forever. And I'm like, yes, you probably did. But let me tell you, your priority list probably shifted when the Vision Pro came out and you saw what people were like, I like this. And you're like, oh, I'm going to put this in the device. So, but Apple did that. And that's what they do really well. They push the people that have already been in those spheres to do better. And I think that it's like the rising tide, raises all of them. So I think that they will all do well in this. And as Apple has that unique ability of making things sexy. So if Apple makes these VR technology, XR, accessible to the regular person, you will see that, other vendors will benefit from that. Like this gets less attention now than it did before because people think it's a Vision Pro. And I do think that where you'll see the application of this, now I'm actually going outside of the productivity space that I've talked about. I think industries that have high cognitive load will benefit from the spatial computing as it makes those, that information. There's a reason why, and I don't think I talked about a lot of the verticals that right now actually already use this stuff. The medical world. So, they announced that the first surgery happened with the Vision Pro. And that's to help with that cognitive load of being like, did I remember all the pieces parts, all the tools? Like, are they there? You can see, what's going on. You can see, using the AR element of, impose or putting over, like, let's say someone's leg where the robot is. So you can see where it's going. So, things that again have this high cognitive load where I probably have to think about what these things are. I can see it; it's right there. It is popular in aviation as well, the auto industry. So you're kind of seeing like these areas like will benefit even more. And I do know that Apple is talking with a whole bunch of different industries and trying to find ways. They're like, how can Vision Pro and what can we do to make Vision Pro useful in your areas? Vision Pro is just as much as a consumer device as it is an enterprise device. So kind of keep that in mind as you see these things moving on in the future. We will manage these devices. So if anything you learn and get out of this, at some point someone might want one of these. Do you just give them a Meta account? Does your security team want you to give them a Meta account? This might not even work for you just because of that alone. So, these are things that you're going to have to keep in mind. The Vision Pro is like an iPad, so, you're going to have to manage that. And any other new devices that come along will probably have to be managed too. So just know that even if this might not be an area that you're interested in, it's an area that you'll be involved in. Devices that let you engage with people physical will be the ones that succeed. So, especially in spatial computing, having the ability to look at people, having to interact in the real world, because that device there's a lot of elements that are meant for this digital world, and it's very isolating. One of the biggest complaints about devices like Vision Pro and other mixed reality headsets are the fact that, hey, I feel isolated. I can only use this. I got the big TV, but it's by myself. But you can use the apps that I talked about too. Bridge that gap. So, with that being said, I hope that you had a good backgammons, and thank you for listening to all my ramblings. It is, this is one of my favorite places to be, and I do or I did leave enough time for Q&A. I love it when it times out perfectly. So with that, I think I have to start throwing this at people's faces. Who's awake? Good catch. Oh.
No?
It's good. They said they can
Yeah,
hear.
we're good? Okay.
Yeah.
One of the things I like to do when I'm testing new technology is give it to my teenagers. See how they behave with it. So I happen to have an Apple Vision Pro on my desk a couple of weeks ago. It wasn't mine, it wasn't designed for me. It didn't work for me because I have eyeglasses and I didn't have the inserts, but my kids don't have eyeglasses. So I give it to them for a couple of nights. And my 16-year-old son and his friend spent the entire night completely engaged. Like, they kept trading it back and forth, and like, oh, now you reset it, and now you reset it, and log in with your Apple ID, and it was a vision of the future. I think that you're correct, that the Apple Vision Pro is not going away. And I think that Apple is doing a lot of really important work to move the industry forward.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you touched on that, and I did not cover that. This device here, any one of you can put this on and start interacting with it. When it comes to the Vision Pro, you have to do an eye track scanning. There is a thing called guest mode, but guest mode, at least in the iteration right now, requires you to do a scan every time. I think for the future iteration for guest mode, I think they are allowing not necessarily separate profiles, but I think that should remember some of that, or you don't have to scan every time. I forgot the details, so I won't pretend I'm an expert, but they are improving guest mode, and they do recognize that.
And then a second comment, I work for a very large manufacturing company, which actually makes a bunch of the glass for these Vision Pros and other headsets.
Oh, that's awesome.
There's ways to make the glass lighter, and they're working on it. So I think you're right also that they will eventually get lighter as the components get miniaturized and the glass gets lighter.
Yeah, and I think they just needed to get, they spent it's no secret, they spent many years working on this. So I think at some point they're like, all right, we just need to get that MVP out. And a very expensive MVP it was.
All right. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right, cool. So with regards to motion sickness, I've heard that, and this worked for me in one case, in one case it didn't. So for those who might have motion sickness, having a fan blowing on you or at least some air,
Yes, I've heard about that.
it helps in some cases unless you're in a game that's ultra immersive and actually adds to the realism of the room, of the space you're in. If you're in a kayak and you're trying to, and then and so it was really funny. In one case it helped, in one case it made it worse because it was much more immersive with the natural wind. And it was funny how it had a completely opposite effect depending on when I was using it. So your mileage may vary on adding the fan to lower motion sickness.
Yes, I've heard about that, and I also, what I found very interesting was they've added, for iPhones, they're adding like a motion sickness feature that I wonder if it would be popular enough, would they bring that to a headset, and if that would actually help in like that way. It might not, but I thought it was like cool. Oh, you got a friend over there.
I'll try not to drop it.
Oh. Hey.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to the motion sickness remedies. Online, I read that having some ginger can work. I didn't believe it, but then I had some candied ginger when I started to feel it, and it alleviated it much quicker than normal. Also, there are tools you can get for in VR and stuff where like you can add a vignette around, so you get less screen space, but that helps with the motion sickness, having less peripheral. And then there's also just getting used to it. So like, if
There
you're
is
going
an
in-
element of that. You
Yeah,
are correct.
if you're getting into like, you want to play like a really immersive game, just play it for like, I don't know, like an hour at a time, and then eventually you can go for longer and longer and longer.
Yeah, and I will add to that. One of the things to also note is when it comes to motion sickness and VR headsets, if you start not feeling well, take the headset off immediately, because your brain will eventually adapt to being like, this makes me sick and I will keep getting sick. So if you do use it, if you do a trial or whatnot, get a Vision Pro, and you're noticing that and you're feeling any discomfort, don't be like me and try to tough it out. No, take it off immediately and be like, okay, you'll sit there and look pretty for a minute.
Sorry, So one thing I'll add though is I'm very susceptible to motion sickness, so I don't want to, I hope that people are not getting the sense that it's going to make you sick immediately if you're as sensitive as I am. There's a game, Half-Life Alyx, okay, it's super awesome, yes. I was afraid it would make me motion sickness, but it has caused zero. The games, and maybe, so if you're into gaming, I think most of us probably are, they have a motion where you can have contiguous movement. I could not do that. I was like immediately sick. But the cool thing is they have what is called a transport mode, or basically you aim essentially with your left joystick and you aim feet where you're going to go, and it snaps you right there. It's called the teleport mode, I think.
Yeah.
This is zero sickness, and you can move really fast that way. So I was fascinated that mode didn't make me sick at all, and it was excellent, and it made the game much more enjoyable. So it depends on how your brain works, but super fun. Oh my gosh, amazing. So,
And to add on to that as well, when it comes to that, I think I mentioned it earlier, it's that disconnect, like your body, like as you move, and your brain is expecting you to like be having one thing happen. So your head is moving, and then everything moves, but you're stationary. Your body is like, what is going on? So that is why that kind of works at teleport, because it's putting you in the same spot that you are. There's no like movement per se. And then also I've heard some people mention that when using things like that, like they'll physically turn and then they'll move. So one of the things I didn't cover was how does movement work in VR as far as like traversing distance. There's actually on your controllers you have your thumbstick, and so each one kind of operates one left and right. It's physically doing this like virtually when you're turning left and right. I'm actually doing this, and then forward and then back. But you're standing still and that's happening, and your brain's like, please don't do that. Yeah, I'm like, please don't. So that is why a lot of that happens. Oh.
Question, where's your neck pain at?
So the neck pain is here. So it's right where a lot of these things actually put pressure, like back here. And then the back pain is down here. I think it's actually the neck muscles causing like tension in the lower back. I don't think it's actually giving me back pain because I've had my posture correct. Honestly, I think it speaks more to my physiology and maybe needing to go to a doctor to suss that out. I don't blame the Vision Pro or these headsets for that, and I also probably should have just taken more breaks. But
Well, the reason I asked that is I'm starting to have like pain in my neck, but it's lower down.
it's lower, yeah. That might be.
So I was gonna say why alleviations, which was like wearing one of those back correction things that you put on your shoulders.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that probably helped me too. But yeah, there is that. It is known, and I actually looked too. I was like, was there any like injuries from VR? And they only found like one case that they were able to say like, oh, there was actually a VR headset that like injured the guy, but like muscle rehab helped him out. But I'm like, could my neck compress and my spine be crushed through this? I'm like, I kind of got paranoid by it. So, everything, you're okay. You just might need some corrections. Anyone else? Oh, we have one in the front. Oh,
Wow.
nice.
Yeah, that normally never happens for me. I'm not athletic. That's why I do IT. So couple questions.
Yeah.
You had the Google Glass on in the beginning, so I Googled that, and it's from 2013. So you've been in this space for a while. And you also mentioned early Android fragmentation, things like that. When you were an early adopter of this stuff, what apps did you see in that augmented reality space that stuck around and have been improved, and which ones have you seen that like came out and then were like, obviously this is terrible, nobody's going to use this, and they went away?
That's a tough question. A lot, like I've been in and out in the space. So to say that I'm like was fully like immersed in the space that whole time. I can speak to a couple of like the apps that like virtual desktop has been around a long time, and that one that what I found interesting with that one in particular was like kind of thought it might die out because I was like, all right, I'm like, hey, you have this virtual desktop and like one screen. Like, it's the current year. You need more than one screen. unless you want to focus. Like I said, I do have ADHD, so I found that these devices have helped my focus if I don't go too crazy with the screens. And they are actually still working on it. So that one I would say is probably one of the older ones that's like stuck around and like had staying power. Honestly, a lot of the games that like were initial hits are still still around and still popular. The thing that's going on with the meta series is they are dropping support for they're not dropping support. They're dropping the ability to create new games for like their original headsets that they have. So like those, but they can play anything that was made now that could run it. So that's good. But you know, it remains to be seen. Like that's the one that makes it a little iffy. Like that they could just turn off that versus like, you know, having, you know, stuff that you've downloaded to your machine. Like I own this. But that's a whole different conversation about ownership, digital and physical.
So one other question related to virtual desktops then. I don't use the big ultra-wide screens.
Yeah.
I have three 1080p monitors I use for work, and I have them arranged the way you had them there on the screen. Something I've been concerned about, though, is what the resolution effectively is like when you're looking at the screen. Can you see detail enough to be able to productively answer an email, or can you see it all, but then if you try to squint in, it's blurred?
So it depends on what you're using. Vision Pro, foveated rendering, so it's tracking where your eyes are. So everything else is blurry. It's kind of funny because when you do screenshots for that, depending on where you're looking, the other areas are blurry, and so you're like, I'm trying to send you a screenshot for this, but that one area is in focus and everything else is blurry. But the other way, if I take a screenshot with this, it gives you the full resolution of the environment. You do not get the full resolution when you're looking around. There is like a graininess to the people. The content though is very crisp, and what's nice about it is it can it be blurry if you have it at different resolutions. You need to kind of make the screen bigger, make it larger, change the resolution. Some apps like Immerse do have the ability to have like 4K screens, but it gets so tiny. So don't necessarily think that you need to go huge with that stuff. It's all about like you can physically make it larger and have it further away from you. Or sometimes I have had little screens that are like basically like little 23 inches, but I can have multiple ones right here, and like it minimizes me having to like look around. So it depends the content that you're viewing too. Like TV content, just big screen.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, right behind you. There's a trend going on here.
It's the pass box. I'm old enough to remember computers before we had mice. And when Apple made a new platform with a GUI and a mouse, it changed everything. And it took a number of years for the rest of the industry to copy it and catch up. I'm also old enough to remember when the iPhone came out, completely new platform. And within a couple of years, the entire industry had copied Apple. All of our phones went from flip phones to slabs of glass. This is a new platform, and I'm bullish about the future. It may take a few years. It's going to take a while for the headsets to become lighter and more advanced. We might start to see them built into eyeglasses as well. But I'm very bullish about what's coming. It's difficult to predict what the applications of the technology will be. I know any large company out there probably has an emerging technology group looking at their own applications or how to apply the technology to their environments. My emerging tech group is looking at ways to do immersive training on our assembly lines. We're looking at doing immersive training for networking stacks and protocols. We're looking at the medical field to do assisted training as well.
Training is a big area where like it's already been used. I don't know if anyone here is Honeygrow. Does anyone know what Honeygrow is? Yeah. Just think about fast casual dining that's very like healthy centric, and you can kind of choose what you want. But I actually found their VR training videos that they had made where it is in the style of the older technology like Google Glass or like VR, where you were like kind of, it was just like you're stationary. If you ever did like one of those virtual tours of a house, like it's kind of like that style. So it's like you had the founder like talking in front of you, and really all you could do is like look around, and it's basically it's like a 360 video that you're a sphere of video that you're inside of. But they were using that for training, and then I think that in the actual like VR like if you were actually doing the training, I think they actually had controllers. Like so you would have to move around the different like they had a freezer, and it was like, all right, where do you put these items properly in the the locker? And so like you can move like all the food around into the right place, and it's like good job, and you get confetti. So like the training is like a big thing that I did kind of hint at, but um, I think what the other element of this technology is that it's one of those things where I think we were just so fascinated about creating our own world that we were just like, let's just do that instead of thinking like, what could this be used for versus a lot of other technology that kind of is like trying to solve a problem. We're kind of finding the problems that we want to solve with this, but we're just so enamored with making that happen.
I mean, just to sum up my comments, I think we're on the edge of a new paradigm shift in how humans interact with technology. And we've been through a few of them in the past, and I think this is a new one. And I'm remain bullish about what's coming. Actually, when I get back to work, there's supposed to be a new Apple Vision Pro sitting on my desk. So I will. That's what I was told. So I'm hoping it's sitting there when I get there.
You need to make sure you get there like
yeah.
right when it gets there.
I
Otherwise,
was
someone
actually
else-
hoping it would be here before, so I could bring it to PSU, but
Yeah.
it hadn't arrived yet. So
Yeah.
I'm very excited about getting myself dumped into this environment and learning how to manage the devices and learning how to maybe help the emerging tech group figure out some new applications for it.
And you'll want to partner with your any groups that are dealing with that, or if a department is like, hey, we would love to have this. One of the things that I didn't mention, my partner actually worked at a university with a professor that wanted to create a virtual environment of a warehouse so that it was a business course. And so these students would have to go into the warehouse, virtually pull down boxes, count what was in the boxes, and basically it was an auditing course. And so like they were using it to actually go through and perform an audit on a warehouse. And they weren't actually doing the programming. They had a vendor that they were working with. But that idea of being like, oh, like, I want to create this thing. How do I, like, in this case, it was not IT working with, it was a professor working with a learning developer, if that happened, I think in current times, and they were like, oh, we're going to do this here and we need headsets for everyone, IT would have to get involved, procurement, so then like you are working with them.
Also, don't underestimate the effect that the device like the Apple Vision Pro might have on the disabled community. People with who are paraplegic or quadriplegic, and they're able to finally use eye tracking to be very interactive with a piece of equipment.
Look through the accessibility stuff. There's so
Or
much
even
stuff.
or even learning disabilities. Think about a child with some significant learning disabilities, and you're able to get them into Apple Vision Pro, and they're able to then learn in a different way that's more attuned to their own learning disability. So there's just, and I'm just brainstorming right off the top of my head, but I think there are millions, literally millions of applications for this technology.
Yeah, and like I said, I put this presentation together because it was so hard for me to be like, oh, what's the different angles I could take? Could I go purely productivity? Originally, it was supposed to be Apple Vision Pro centric. We know what happened with that. But like, I was just like, I'm so excited of this, but it's so like, we're really at that point where everything is kind of so disjointed right now that it's kind of hard to say where it's going and have a specific topic. So this is kind of what I wanted it. I wanted to be a discussion that you like leave here being like, oh, like I can take this away with me and think of it's thought provoking. It's like, how can I use this? Maybe you'll find something.
Thanks. So another question, the augmented reality stuff, like you've got X-Real Air Pro 2s there.
Yeah.
Do those have cameras or on them so that they can see things, or do they just basically put the information in front of you and provide information to you while you're looking through them?
So for these and what I showed earlier, that example of the AR glasses was kind of a misnomer because, and that might not be the right word for this. These are actually putting screens in front of you, but it's not really in the sense of like I haven't used any apps that would be like, oh, like navigate me through this place or stuff. That I've purely used these in the to screen share my Mac to these so that I could work out of a coffee shop. I could work on the plane. I did a lot of this presentation on this and this guy right here. But to answer your question about the cameras, the new versions of these have cameras that can track space. So it's really funny because, as I said, after halfway through creating the presentation, I just noticed that everything was shifting. I'm like, oh, so they're going to have cameras on it. And that's the nice thing about these, actually, that I will add. These don't have cameras on them. So anyone that's freaking out about these, they don't have cameras. Don't worry, you're okay, because I did know that especially with Google Glass, that people were freaking out about the cameras. They're like, oh my God, you're gonna record me, and it's like, well, this light will tell you that you're recording me. No, how do I know like that is? And there was a whole campaign, like Google was like, no, like you're not, it's not going to do that. Like, don't worry, it's gonna be okay. But it wasn't okay because it flopped. But that you will see that they will all have the
Yeah.
cameras.
The reason why I ask is because one of the applications, which is an assistive thing, is I'm waiting for technology that can do facial recognition. So people are starting to have memory loss, or for salespeople, or people at this conference, I will not remember your name unless I've seen it half a dozen times. I will call you the wrong thing if I attempt to. So having an aide to say, oh, this is George. He sat with you at lunch the last 3 times. Having that information pop up would make things a lot less socially awkward for me. Not that I'm want this just for myself, but
Yeah.
My grandfather has memory loss, and so to be able to have that, so he feels less embarrassed about who am I talking to.
I think that and I think that Apple Intelligence combined with Vision Pro can and will probably enable things like that. And then all you need is a developer that wants to bundle all of that together. But that was another thing that I was like, oh, I could see this being an assistive device as far as not just memory, but just like a digital assistant, just being like, oh, get to that meeting, it's over there, run over there. And I think the element right now is missing is that an assistant that can really work well. And so I think they're working on that, and then I think that'll be helpful. But that's a very good use case, and I could see that happening.
So I guess the question really is one about interfaces, right?
Yeah.
That's really the core of any computing device, is the interface between the person and the device. And I think to Damien's point, Apple does a really good job of figuring out how to remove the interface between the user and the device one sort of layer at a time, right? And so we've seen it with the graphical user interface, and now we're seeing it with the iPhone, where iPhone and particularly the iPad, where you've got a slab of glass that turns into whatever tool it is that you need, right?
Yeah.
So the interface sort of gets out of your way and lets you do your thing. And now with the spatial computing, we're seeing even that is going away, right? Now it's no longer a slab of glass. Now the slab of glass is your entire field of vision,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So eventually, I think we're with the large language learning models, and we'll get to the point where the interface is just you having a conversation with your agent.
And keep in mind that right now, and this happened as we talked about earlier with the Apple developing the mouse and using it. People didn't know how to use that thing. They're like, what the heck is this? Now you have this whole new platform that you have to make very familiar,
Right.
and then slowly remove those details, as you were saying, and so that eventually it is something different altogether. But at first, that's why people are like, oh, it's just iPad apps on the thing and whatnot. And I'm like, yeah, because they want to give you something familiar, and then content is a big, huge part. The fragmentation I was talking about is a problem, and I think that they needed to bring all that content in there and whatnot and make it something familiar. But over time, it will get a little bit different. But you won't know what's happening if it's really good design.
Exactly, yeah. You never know that it's happening. Apple trained people on multi-touch for a decade before the iPhone came.
Exactly.
You know.
So, all right, we have 35, 34. So, unless there's any burning questions, thank you, everyone. Have a good day.